It's okay not to be okay, but I promise I'm trying. By rayrae118, my personal redo. Chapter 4. Dear Harry, I hope your summer studies are going well. If you have any questions on the arithmancy text, please don't hesitate to ask. I've been spending a good deal of time reading ahead for next term. We only have 2 more years before our OWL exams, so I've been drawing up revision schedules. I do hope I have enough time to get everything done. My parents are talking about going on holiday for a few weeks this summer, though we will definitely be back by August. Ron says the Quidditch World Cup will be in England this year, and he believes his dad can get tickets. It should be so fascinating to watch history in the making. Love from Hermione.
Mate, how's everything going? Have you heard from Hermione yet? Can you believe it? 2 years until OWLs, and she's already talking about revising. Mental, that one is. Summer's been pretty normal here. Fred and George are holed up in their rooms most of the time, though the explosions have been at the minimum so far. Percy's got a job lined up at the ministry, the prat. Can't say I thought he'd go anywhere else, though. He's been talking about working for the Pillar of Magical Society since before I started Hogwarts. Have you heard? The Quidditch World Cup's gonna be in England this year. Dad reckons he can get some tickets through work, so you've got to come. Hermione will be there too. She said the historical aspects would be fascinating. Speaking of the siblings, mate, what's up with you and Ginny? Why does she suddenly think you're best friends or something? She wants to give Errol her letter too, so I better wrap this up. Don't let the Muggles get you down. Ron. Dear Harry, don't worry, I'm alright. I won't tell you where I am, in case this letter gets intercepted. But I want you to know that I'm safe. If you need anything, I'm only an hour away, and I'll be there, no matter what. We didn't have a whole lot of time to talk, but I hope to remedy that soon. From what I've seen of you, though, I can tell that you are a remarkable young man. You remind me so much of your parents, Harry, and not just in looks. That generous, caring soul is all Lily. The passion and belief in doing what's right is definitely James, and I dare say you got both of their tempers. Never doubt yourself, Harry. You've got good instincts, so use them. And remember, I'm here for you. Padfoot.
Dear Harry, I hope things aren't too horrible. You'd tell me if they were, right? Things have been pretty boring here so far. Mum's got me and Ron doing chores, though I dare say you've probably got more. Fred and George are causing their usual mayhem, though fortunately we came to an agreement a long time ago, so I don't have to worry about them pranking me. Ask me to tell you about it sometime. It really is quite the story. Ron's been on his guard after the first night when they gave him a duck bill. But right now they're focusing on Percy. They say they need to get it all out now before he moves out. I'm not sure when that'll be, but now that he has a job, I'm expecting it any day. Bill left most of his textbooks here when he moved to Egypt, so I've been able to do a little reading for the next term. I'm about halfway done through arithmancy text. It's quite fascinating. I'm really glad I chose it, as opposed to divination. Listening to Ron grumble and complain really didn't make the decision too hard. I really hope you are able to get into the class in September, so that you can help me with my homework. Please tell me how things are going, and I won't accept any lame "I'm fine" letters. I expect you to tell me the truth. You promised, remember? If things get bad, don't forget you're welcome here any time. At the very least, you've got to come for the Quidditch World Cup. I'm sure Ron's already told you about it, so I won't. I miss you, Harry. Please tell me if you're all right. I'm really worried. Have you heard from McGonagall yet? I trust her, so if she says she's going to get you out, she will. Right soon. Ginny. Summer with the Dursleys was never fun, but Harry usually knew what to expect. This summer, however, he was unpleasantly surprised to discover that Vernon was ready to take his treatment to a whole new level. Harry was let out of his room before Vernon left for work the next day, and given a long list of chores to do by Petunia. His cautious inquiry about breakfast was met with a disgusted sniff and a shove toward the cleaning supplies. That day set the routine for the next week. His uncle would wake Harry up before leaving for work. Petunia would give him a list of chores to do for the day. He would be given one meal a day, at lunchtime, if you could call it that. Petunia would thrust a piece of bread, a few slices of cheese, and a glass of water at him, with a barked order to not get any mud, dirt, or dust on the floor, depending on what chore he had been working on beforehand. He would be back to work shortly thereafter, and would spend the rest of the day finishing his chores. If he were lucky, he would get through the list before Vernon returned from work. That usually resulted in a few pointed insults, sometimes a few slaps or punches, but never enough to do more than leave a few bruises. If he didn't finish the list, Vernon would take him to task. Those beatings were much worse, but, so far, Harry had been able to escape serious harm. Waking up 1 week after his return from Hogwarts, Harry winced as he tried to get out of bed without jostling the rib he was certain was at least cracked. He was fairly sure it wasn't broken, though, which was fortunate, as that would cause a whole new set of problems. His vision blurred slightly, reminding him of the blow to the head that he had taken the previous night, and Harry grimaced. He heard the now familiar sound of the locks disengaging, and knew he only had a few minutes before his aunt would be handing him his list of chores for the day. With a sigh, Harry stood up and got ready to face the day. He whispered a muted prayer to McGonagall to hurry up, before he left his room. Minerva McGonagall looked up as the fire in her office flared, before the flue spit out Amelia Bones, head of the DMLE. She set down the paper she was currently reading, before standing up to give her former student a rare smile. "Thank you for coming, Amelia," she said, gesturing the formidable woman towards a chair in front of her desk. Amelia nodded as she sat down. "Your note was rather vague, Minerva. It sounded rather important, so I apologize for the delay. Things have been somewhat busy lately." Minerva's smile tightened. "I understand," she replied. "And you're right. It is rather important, though also quite delicate. I am hoping you will be able to help me with some discretion." Amelia contemplated that request, the gears in her mind turning. There weren't many reasons why a professor would be contacting the DMLE. If it was something concerning the school, Dumbledore would have been the one to include her. Not that he would. She respected the old man as a powerful wizard, but she took everything about him with a grain of salt. She felt he could be a little heavy-handed and manipulative, playing things too close to the chest, when sharing information could be so much more beneficial. She also did not believe in trusting blindly, as so many seemed to do with the venerable old man. She believed that trust was earned, and she did not like the way Dumbledore seemed to play with people's lives. After a moment, Amelia nodded her agreement. "I will do my best, but, of course, you understand that, without knowing what I am agreeing to, I cannot guarantee anything." Minerva's smile was a little more genuine at that. "I understand," she affirmed, and then paused. How was she to broach the subject? And which to talk about first? Harry or Sirius? Deciding that, of the two, Harry's predicament was the more grave, she began there. After all, Sirius had eluded capture for almost a year now. He would be all right for another few days, most likely. Minerva sighed. A situation about a student's home life was brought to my attention shortly before the express departed last week. He told me that his guardians were both physically and emotionally abusive, and I'm hoping to get him out of this situation with a little fuss or fanfare. Amelia sat back and considered the concise report she had just been given. As a former Aura, the head of the DMLE, she appreciated getting the maximum information in the shortest amount of time. She could draw several conclusions just based on what she had in front of her. It was that Minerva coming to her that suggested the student in question was a Gryffindor. The fact that she had said guardians suggested that this child did not live with his biological parents. Even the lack of Dumbledore gave the illusion that Minerva was reluctant to let any authority figures involved. Or, rather, any that she thought may have their own agenda. Amelia was well known for being a stickler for the law. Tough, but fair. It was a reputation she prided and strove to uphold. The only thing she couldn't really figure out was who it was her former professor was trying to help. Clasping her hands together, Amelia sat up straighter. I will need to speak to the student in question, you understand. But if what you are saying is true, the Department of Child Welfare will need to become involved. If his guardians are, as you say, physically abusive, removing him shouldn't be a problem. Minerva snorted at that, shaking her head. This whole situation was riddled with problems. Amelia frowned. This might be easier if you were to just tell me whom you are talking about. Minerva took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Harry Potter, she admitted quietly. Amelia froze. No, surely not. She remembered quite clearly the events that had led to the end of the war 12 years ago. Everyone had rejoiced in the disappearance of he who must not be named. But no one had given a second thought to the young boy who had made it happen. Even she was guilty of that. She had been drowning herself in her own grief over the death of her brother and sister-in-law, and adjusting to motherhood, being charged with the care of her now orphaned niece. She had felt for her young charge, but never once had she considered the fact that Susan wasn't the only orphan of the war. Somewhere, in a location unknown, a young Harry Potter had lost everything, and everyone he had ever known, and was sent to live with abusive relatives. His aunt hadn't been there to hug away the nightmares that woke him up screaming in the middle of the night. More likely, she had just told him to shut up and let decent people sleep. All those celebrations about the end of the war, and no one had really given thought to the young family that had been ripped apart to make it happen. Minerva seemed to understand exactly what Amelia was thinking, because she nodded and handed the younger woman a handkerchief. I know, she commiserated. All that celebrating. James and Lily were two of my best friends, despite the age difference. And I didn't even try to get Albus to change his mind in Harry's placement at his relatives. Not really. I had watched them all day. I knew they were the worst sort of muggles, and yet I still let Albus put him there. I just watched as he left Harry on a doorstep in the middle of the night, with naught but a letter for explanation. And in 10 years I didn't even ask Albus for an update. I thought he had been watching the boy, but I never confirmed it. I should have done something. The self-disgust was evident in her tone, causing Amelia to set down the borrowed handkerchief and lean forward in her chair. It's not your fault, Minerva, she implored. Albus should have listened to you. I respect him as a wizard, but you can't deny that he tends to see people more as chess pieces than human beings. He has his own plans, and doesn't seem to understand that you need a backup for when those plans go pear-shaped. Minerva chuckled weakly as she nodded her head. Albus was a good friend, but there was no denying that he made his share of mistakes. And, unfortunately, he wasn't quite as willing to own up to them as some. After a moment of silence, Amelia shook her head. "Can you get in touch with Harry? I can file a formal complaint and bring Patricia Welding on board, and then we can go and speak with him." Minerva nodded at the name of the Department of Child Welfare. Patricia had been a Ravenclaw, a few years above Amelia. She was capable of using discretion if the situation called for it, and Minerva knew she would respect Harry's wishes. She always looked after the child first. But, in her own way, she could be as tough as Amelia. The DMLE head studied the professor for a moment. "Where were you thinking Harry would live until he reaches his majority?" she asked curiously. Minerva bit her lip, looking suddenly uncertain. "I had rather thought I might take him in, if he was willing," she admitted softly. She wasn't sure how to even ask the young wizard, but the idea appealed to her more and more as she thought about it. McGonagall Castle was rather lonely, after all, with just her. Amelia nodded, satisfied. She began to make motions of standing up, but when Minerva stopped her, "I actually had another issue I wanted to discuss. Something else Albus should have taken care of, but for some reason he seems unwilling." Amelia frowned, settling back onto her seat. She nodded for Minerva to continue, which she did, hesitantly, doing nothing to settle the former Aura's nerves. Minerva swallowed. She was getting into dangerous territory. "A situation came to light at the end of the semester. Are you aware that Sirius Black was never given a trial?" Amelia's eyes narrowed, her heart skipped a beat, and she shook her head. Minerva sighed. "A few weeks ago, Harry and his friends were confronted by Sirius, where he explained that he had been set up to take the fall for something he didn't do." "Black was here!" Amelia half rose out of her seat, but a glare from McGonagall had her sitting back down, suddenly feeling like the student she hadn't been in many years. "Yes, he was here. He snuck into Hogwarts to capture the real culprit, who unfortunately escaped before we were able to question him properly." "And just who was that culprit?" Amelia asked, somewhat waspishly. Minerva sighed. "Peter Pettigrew," she admitted. It shamed her that a Gryffindor would betray his friends like that. Amelia shook her head in disbelief. "Pettigrew's been dead for 12 years, she denied. McGonagall cut her off. "All they found was a finger. Doesn't that strike you as odd? If he really had been blown up, wouldn't there have been blood or bits of flesh? There never really was a proper investigation. Crouch and Bagnold just declared the matter closed because everyone knew Black was guilty. As it turns out, Pettigrew had been hiding as a pet rat in a wizarding household for over a decade. Sirius recognized him from a picture in the Prophet and escaped to protect Harry. Harry and his friends saw Pettigrew with their own eyes, but because of his escape, Fudge wouldn't hear a word about it. Incidentally, isn't it against the law to order someone who was never given a trial to be kissed on sight?" Amelia considered the implications from what she had just heard. This was quite the embarrassment for the Ministry, and as a law enforcement official, it rubbed her the wrong way. And then there were the personal implications. She sat back in her seat and rubbed her face tiredly. "I don't suppose you might have some way of getting in touch with Sirius?" she asked curiously. Minerva shook her head. "I could try to owl him, but I can't guarantee that would work. I'm sure he's keeping in touch with Harry, though, so you could ask him. It would definitely be a point in your favour if you could get him out of his relative's house. He doesn't trust easily, and seems to be wary of authority figures, for obvious reasons." Amelia nodded. I can understand, she admitted. We really failed him, didn't we? Minerva didn't need to reply, even knowing that she was speaking about both Harry and Sirius with that statement. And, after a moment, the head of the DMLE stood up, shaking herself off, and mentally making a list of things she would need to do to correct this horrible miscarriage of justice. Thank you for including me in this. I'll let you know as soon as I speak with Patricia, and hopefully we will be able to talk with Harry in a day or two. Minerva stood up as well, and offered her hand, which was shaken firmly. She let out a small smile. Thank you for your help. The sooner the better, I believe. I never want to see that look of fear in Harry's eyes again. Amelia nodded. I'll be in touch, she promised, before making her exit through the flue. Minerva waited until the flames had subsided, before she sat back down, returning to her work, her chest feeling slightly lighter with the knowledge that things were moving along, and hopefully, soon, Harry would be out of that nightmare of a house. Ron. Sounds like it's business as usual at the Weasley household. I bet Percy's excited for his new job. Though from what Ginny said, it sounds like the twins are celebrating his appointment in their usual style. That's got to be keeping him on his toes. Speaking of Ginny, she's my friend. I told her I'd write, and I asked her if she would as well. We had a good talk before we left school, and we really have a lot in common. Don't worry, mate. You know you're my best friend. The World Cup sounds great. Let me know more when you hear. The Muggles are behaving pretty much how I expected, but I'm used to it by now. I'm fine. Harry. Hermione, I've been doing a lot of studying, both arithmancy and ancient runes. I got a letter from McGonagall a few days ago, and she said I might be able to take the runes exam too. Just the idea of no more Trelawney is motivator enough for me to work hard. Summer's been pretty much the same as it always is, so about what I expected. I'm fine, and I hope you enjoy your holiday. Harry. Padfoot. I don't know where this will find you, but I do hope you're keeping out of trouble. I wish I could be with you, even if you are on the run. Anything would be better than the Dursleys. But don't worry about me. Just worry about keeping yourself hidden. I don't want to read about your recapture in the Prophet. I'll be fine, Padfoot. I'm used to this. So please, don't worry about me. What you said about my parents really meant a lot to me. I look forward to hearing any stories you can share with me. And I miss you. Love, Harry. Dear Ginny, don't worry. I won't even try to sell you that I'm fine crap, as you asked. I did promise. I won't say things are great, or even good. I just hope McGonagall is moving fast. I'm not sure how much longer I can go before I end up cursing Uncle Vernon, underage laws or not. I'm as alright as I can be, Gin. I don't think he's broken anything yet, but I'm really not sure how long that'll last. I don't want to scare you, but I did promise I wouldn't lie to you. I'm doing a lot of studying. Thankfully, I was able to owl order the arithmancy and ancient runes books, like you suggested, so they didn't get locked up with the rest of my stuff when I got back to Privet Drive. I'm working as hard as I can, so that I can pass the exams to get into both classes next year. I haven't heard much from McGonagall yet, but she said she's been in touch with Amelia Bones from the DMLE. I've never heard of her, though I think she's related to Susan Bones, a Hufflepuff in my year. McGonagall says she trusts Miss Bones, so I guess I should too. I'll keep you updated, Gin. If anything happens, you'll be the first to know. I miss you, and I can't wait to see you again. Hopefully soon. Love, Harry. Before I finish this chapter, this last bit has a scene of graphic violence and abuse. If this is triggering for any of you, feel free to move on to the next chapter. Harry had just watched Hedwig disappear into the darkening sky with his letters for Ginny and Ron, when a door slamming caused his attention to waver. He swallowed harshly as he heard muted yelling and the sounds of a heavy person making their way up the stairs. It sounded like Uncle Vernon was really angry tonight. That thought proved to be true, as his uncle threw open his bedroom door in the next second. It spoke to his frame of mind that he didn't bother to take the time to disengage the locks, and instead ripped them all off their hinges. His face was a mask of fury, causing Harry to shrink backwards towards the window frame. But that didn't do anything to deter the wail coming at him. Time seemed to become meaningless after that, and Harry was only aware of the feeling of pain and the sound of flesh hitting flesh. He heard some vague threats, and something about a lost client of his uncle's being his fault, but he couldn't make much more sense than that. He lost count of the number of times Vernon's foot connected with his chest. He felt it when the first rib snapped, followed by another crunching sound he was pretty sure was his collarbone. His head connected with the leg of his bed, and darkness encroached on his vision. Finally, Harry welcomed the blackness, and he was no longer aware of anything around him. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Nasty ending, but otherwise I quite like it. And that bit in Sirius's letter that really touches me. Harry is holding on to the abuse and telling Sirius not to get involved because he's trying to protect Sirius the way adults should be protecting him. This is why I love Harry Potter as an actual character. His utter selflessness is never highlighted enough, and I just want to give him a hug. And I like that Amelia and Minerva are making things move quickly. I appreciate that. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals, and my pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.